may work on later, but just mainly the basics today. So, we good to go, Sally?
Yeah, sorry, I was just hitting record.
Love it. And we're recording. Perfect.
It's doing a transcript as well, so I'm going to turn that off because I don't want to see that. All right, guys. So I think I've left it that you can unmute yourself. So if you want to ask questions as we're going along, please feel free. I'll go through a bit of an orientation to the machine, and then we'll go through the circuit, setting it up on a patient, and then using it when it's up and running. Okay, so just when you look at the back of the machine, so the Hamiltons are turbine driven. So what that means is that they've got the ability to entrain air through their back port. So there's this little port in the back where it's going to pull air into the machine. Okay, so you don't have an external air supply. You've only got an oxygen hose. Okay, so it means that if your oxygen ever runs out, it's still going to deliver breaths in 21%. Okay, there is a dust cover there. Should just be checked once a month, washed in warm soapy water and replaced if it's dirty. Okay, on this side of the machine, what we've got here is that oxygen hose. We've also got the power cable. So really important to leave the ventilator plugged in at the bedside. You can leave the ventilator off, and I do recommend you leave it off when it's not in use, just so that your batteries stay at their optimum health. So they'll last fully charged. You've got about 9 hours of battery life. Okay, you've also got behind here a USB port. So if you want to get any screenshots or if there's any logs or anything that we need to download, we're able to do that as well. And then just behind here, we have another cover. So this one's another dust cover. And this one just gets can get quite white and dusty. So again, just check it once a month and clean it. You can often get away with just giving it a bit of a shake if you do it regularly. Okay. And then when we come over to this side, so this is the side that your circuit all gets set up in. So everything that you need in your circuit comes in the one pack. Okay. You've got this here, which is your expiratory valve. And when you look at the expiratory valve, there is this clear membrane on it. So you always want to make sure that that's sitting there tight and it's not twisted, puckered, or on the floor. When it goes into the machine, metal side faces in, and you turn and lock it into place. Okay. The circuit is a dual limb. So you've got the inspiratory is inside the expiratory. So when you look at it, you can see the blue limb inside the white limb. Okay, so it is still a dual limb circuit. So it just lines up on here onto those two ports. If it gets set up the other way, it's still going to work perfectly the same. It just means that often your tubing is awkward for your patient placement compared to the vent. Then you've got your flow sensor, and it comes with these two lines, and you've just got to separate them apart and then line them up white to white and blue to blue. The yellow port that you've got here is for a pneumatic nebulizer, so we can run a nebulizer through the machine as well. Okay, but that's the circuit setup. The flow sensor will already be up and connected up to the tubing, so you don't need to worry about anything on that front of it. Okay. Any questions on circuit setup?
No, all good. Thank you.
No, all good. So then,
Flow sensor. Flow sensor.
let me just come a little bit closer. So when you look at the screen, down the bottom here, we've got a button that says pre-op check. So the screen always starts up in this view. So you touch on pre-op check, and you can see that there's 3 checks here. So the top one is tightness, flow sensor, and O2 cell. With the O2 cell, you would only need to do it if it came up with a red cross, and at which point you just double check you're connected into your oxygen, and then you would just touch on it to run it. Okay. With the tightness test, this is like a leak check. So the circuit, when it first comes out of the pack, comes with a red cap on the end. So what you do is touch on tightness, tells you disconnect patient, so you could take that red cap off. Then it will tell you to tighten patient system, so you pop your cap back on. Okay. If the cap has gone missing, it's not the end of the world. You can use a gloved hand to run this test as well. So you want to hear that sound, which is like the, it's releasing the pressure out the expiratory valve. So that's a good sound. Then you've got your flow sensor test. So this is the calibration of the flow sensor, and you need this little connector. Sorry, that's a bit close. You need this little connector, and it fits into the end, and it comes in every pack. Okay, and it can fit both ways, so it doesn't matter which way you pop it on. Then when you touch on flow sensor, it's going to tell you to disconnect patient. So we've already done that. And then turn flow sensor. So take hold of the blue and turn the whole thing around. Okay. What it will do as part of this process is it blows 5 preset levels of flow through. So it measures it at each of those points. And then so it sounds like it ramps up, and then will almost sound like it cuts out. And you'll get a message on the screen. So at the moment, I don't know if you can see it, at the moment it says maneuver in progress. When it's ready to turn, it will tell you turn flow sensor. Okay, so you can hear it building. Now says turn flow sensor. So you take it out and you pop it back. Okay, so it ends back in the position that it will go onto the patient. Okay, the reason that you have to turn it is because it's almost zeroing itself at each of those points, so that when it's on the patient, it's able to measure what's going in and what's coming out. Okay. And again, you get a green tick, date and time of completion. With this little connector, in an effort to keep it available for the next shift check, what we teach is that you can pull your line off, loop it through, and it's there for the next shift to use it. Okay. If you don't pass that flow sensor check, but you know that you've turned it at the right time, just come back and check your expiratory valve, pull it out, reseat it, and pop it back in. Okay. Any questions on the circuit checks?
There's fair ones of that if it goes missing.
Yeah, so every circuit has a fresh one of these in it. So every time you open it, it'll have a fresh. So each check is just per circuit.
Yeah.
And each of those flow sensors is in with the circuit.
Yeah, so the circuit might sit there through several shifts if the oscillator's not used, but you need to check it every shift.
Oh, we were discussing that. It doesn't necessarily, we decided to.
From a nursing point of view, we'll still probably check it at every shift at the beginning for our safety, because it's what we normally do. But as Sally said yesterday, it is a circuit check. It's once checked, it's fine to go, but from our point of view, we'll probably continue to compliment and check it shift with like on a time manner.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also keep in mind it is clean. So if you keep a couple of spares after you've used, like been going a little bit, you can have a little sneaky stash, which is what some places do. Okay.
Yep.
So then when you come to use it to set it up on a patient, so I've finally updated my quick start. So we've got here a volume mode. I've done a sample with a pediatric mode and then NIV. So what you could do is come along, go, all right, we've got an adult. I'm doing a volume. It's a female. Dial in.
So sorry, just for the people here, and they're just looking at, we don't have ours set up into the quick start, as you said. Hopefully we will. But we just have adult 1, adult 2, and adult 3.
Yeah. So at the moment, yours are all defaulted to the ASV, but this is what a sample of what it could be, that if you've got these set as your most commonly used modes, you would be able to just go, yep, that's the one. This is that. Here's their height. Touch on controls. Double check that all those controls match what you would want. If you want to adjust anything, you can. So you touch, make it orange, turn, confirm. Okay. If you make a change but don't confirm it, it won't let you go anywhere else until you do confirm it. Okay. And you can confirm both on the screen or with the knob. Okay. I'm just trying to get it so that's maybe not so glary.
Yeah, that's good.
Whereas if you aren't using one of those modes, see here you've got a modes tab, you touch on that and brings up all the modes. So the modes are always there. The 3 tabs on the front are really just for your most commonly used just to get the vent up and running quicker. Okay. So if you were using one of these, you could come in here, set it all up, and then you'd hit confirm and you'd have that mode ready to go. So whatever mode is sitting up in the right-hand corner is the mode that you're going to be active in. Okay. I haven't actually gone into it too much, I don't think, in the last couple of sessions, but it does do pediatric patients as well. And you've got the option to do neonatal on the ones that you've got with this neonatal tab. Generally under 15 onto the neo tab, different circuit. There's a lot more information on that available online as well.
We'll probably do a separate session down the track, but this is the neonatal kit for under 15 kilos, but I think we'll just keep it to the basics today.
Yeah, so being aware that if you're doing a pediatric patient, it's the same circuit, you just set their weight rather than their height. Okay, and the ventilator has adjusted that rate to reflect that smaller patient. Okay, so just being aware that's what happens as you change that height. But let's come back to what you're probably most familiar with. So here we are, we've set that up. Just remembering to turn that down because otherwise it alarms. What's happened with this 53 kilo ideal body weight is that if I come down to my alarms, the minute volume and tidal volume alarm limits have set around that as well. So the ventilator is always going to still work if you've forgotten to set that gender and height at the beginning, but you might get inappropriate alarm messages. Okay, so you would have to come in and adjust them independently. Okay.
You need to confirm.
You're up to where I'm up to.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
We're
Okay.
Yeah.
So once you're ready to go, hit on start ventilation.
We'll put it on SIMV.
You're going to go SIMV, yep.
We'll confirm that. And we're just confirming standard settings. We can discuss those a bit more, but we will start ventilation. So we're waiting.
Just being aware, so the difference between the two, so in SIMV, we set a rate and an I time, and down in the bottom corner, we'll have your reflected IE ratio. So you'll see as you adjust your rate, that IE ratio adjusts as well.
I'll just show the guys here. So for in SIMV setting, what it is, we're just basically when you have the option to adjust the I time, and down there you have your IE ratio. So obviously as you increase your I time, that's going to decrease your IE ratio. And as well, you can adjust your rest rate as well, which will influence that as well. So it's a combination of I time and rest rate, which may be slightly different than some ventilators that we may be used to.
Okay. So when you're up and running, you've got your active mode up in the top. You've got your quick controllers here that you can use to adjust. I'm actually going to dial it up. Or you hit on controls to bring them all out. Okay. Down here in alarms, what I'll point out now is that we've got a pressure limit as part of your alarm. Okay. And see here it's set at 40. What that correlates to on your pressure waveform is a red line. So the difference between the red and the blue is think of it as a hard and a soft limit. The red is your hard limit or dump point. The blue is your soft limit, and that's where the breath will deliver up to. Okay, so the ventilator will only deliver a pressure to the blue line. The breath will still be delivered in length. You may not hit your target volume. Try and trigger it off actually. But you're still getting the length of the breath. You get an alert telling you that you've hit your pressure limitation, but you can see that we're still delivering the breath. Okay. If you've got a patient that you're happy to deliver a higher pressure for, you could come into your alarms, touch on that, and say you wanted to go up to 35. You dial that to 45 and hit confirm. Okay. So it's slightly different to if you're used to the Draeger, I think you set a P max or P limit. This one you're setting the red and the blue is 10 below it.
But you can set the red and the blue line separately, or the blue is a standard.
No,
Blue
the
is
blue
up
is a standard 10 below.
and it's gonna cut out, so just be aware, yeah, as she said, it's gonna be cutting out at 35, even when that's set to 45.
Okay. Also looking at the pressure waveform, so if your patient starts to breathe, what you'll see happening is little triangles forming underneath when you've got a triggered breath. Okay, so that's what those pink triangles mean. On the left-hand side, you've got your monitored numbers. So we've got 4 on main display. And then when you come into monitoring, you'll find 3 more pages of numbers here for you. So the first page is your pressures and your minute volume. Page 2 is your eye time and your flow, and then you've got your leak. Okay, because of the turbine feature, it does have the ability to pull in quite a bit to compensate for leak. And then you've got page 3 is your resistance and compliance. It will give every now and then a plateau pressure, but it may not be there consistently. It's always a calculated plateau pressure. And I'll show you how you could mimic one to measure one though, okay? When we're coming across the bottom, tools is all the stuff we use in the background, so please don't go into tools. Events, this is a log of all the settings. So as your patient starts up, the settings are downloaded, and then all the changes and alarms that go off will be recorded. Okay, and this log we are able to download it after the fact. Okay. System is information on your vent. It's also given you an O2 consumption. So if you are going on transport, you're able to double check if you've got enough O2 to go. It's also in here that you can review when your tests were last done, and you can change your volume, brightness, and date and time. Okay. All good up to there?
Yeah, all good.
Yep. Your flow waveform down the bottom, if you touch in the middle there, if you're somebody who likes trends, you can look at them. If you're a loops person, you've also got that loaded on yours that you can have a look at your loops. Or you've also got in graphics the dynamic lung. So Hamilton has this on their website. So if you ever go on that website, that's all the view that they ever use. It's feeding back resistance and compliance. So this would tell you that you've got a very stiff lung on your patient. Oh, you can't see it on your screen, sorry. If you're at home, what we've got is there's a blue shadow and a white shadow, and it's a very stiff lung has no edges to it, has sharp edges to it, sorry, whereas a normal compliant lung looks like yours does on the screen at the moment in the normal shape of a lung. Okay.
Parallelogram, so that would be.
We got a stiff lung here.
You've got a stiff lung there, yeah, yeah. So if you saw that on a patient, you'd be thinking you've got some sort of restriction, low compliance. Okay. On the side, you also have a few extra keys as well. So top one's just a brightness toggle. You've got a lock, so when you press on it, a green light comes on, locks the screen. Quite handy if you're going on transport. You press it again to unlock it. The lung below it, when you touch on it lightly, it delivers a manual breath, but it's also where if you press and hold on it, so you can hold it for a few seconds, and then you've got the ability to use this pause button up the top. So it pauses the screen. The ventilator still continues to deliver breaths, but you can come back and review what that plateau pressure was. Then you've got a number up in the corner here letting you know. Okay.
Yeah.
Unpause the screen, just press on it again. You've also got an O2 boost. So when you touch on that, your oxygen jumps to 100% for 2 minutes. At the end of 2 minutes, it comes back to whatever it was pre-boost. You just touch on it again to cancel it out. Okay. The printer here is a screen grab. So it's kind of like on your phone if you do a screenshot. anytime you press it and you've got a USB in the side, it will send that image to it. And then you've got your spray can. So if you do use the nebulizer port on the side, so you'd put your oxygen tubing over to the yellow port, your T-piece would come into the circuit up. So you'd have a HME and then you'd have your T-piece with the chamber, the medication chamber underneath it. And then you would touch on this to start running it. Okay, it runs for 30 minutes on inspiration only. And then, of course, the most important button, shush. So you've got 2 minutes of alarm silence. You've got a clock letting you know how long on that alarm silence you've got left. If you're about to walk away and you want to make them active again, just touch on it and everything becomes active. Okay. If you want to change mode, so let's say you want to move over to a pressure mode, you're still delivering in this mode, you're setting up in this mode. It's not until you hit confirm that you move over. Okay, but you can see when you come into modes, you can move between non-invasive and invasive without going into standby, but you can't move into high flow. The reason is that you need to move into a wet circuit to do high flow, and you can take the flow sensor out. Okay, if you need to come into standby, press the on-off button once, and then you confirm to activate standby. So you can't accidentally turn it off. Okay, but if you do come into standby, you have to always start it back up. So the ventilator isn't going to recognize a patient effort and start working again. You've got to tell it to start ventilation. Okay. Kevin, did you want me to cover NIV as well?
Yeah, why don't we touch on it quickly just to give people a bit of familiarization? Yeah, why don't we do that?
So we've got 2 NIV modes. Generally, NIV is the most commonly used. If you were trying to do CPAP, you would set your P support to 0, and then whatever you set in your PEEP is your CPAP. Okay, so it's just standard CPAP. If, however, you wanted to give BiPAP, whatever you dial up in P support is additional to PEEP. So if you're used to a V60, you would be setting an IPAP, and the IPAP is the addition of P support and PEEP together.
Just for the guys, we have it set on 5 and 5, so that's the equivalent to when you usually say BiPAP 10 on 5.
Yep.
And you got 5, yeah, 5 and 5, so that'd be 10 on 5.
10 on 5, yep. So in the NIV mode, you've also got apnea backup. So if your patient becomes apneic, the ventilator alerts, lets you know that it's gone into apnea ventilation. I'll show that to you. And I'll show then how that differs to NIV ST. So here we go. Patient spontaneously breathing. You can see that you've got your peak pressure, which is the addition of these two without being on a test lung. But then if your patient stops breathing, what we've got down in alarms is an apnea time. So it's defaulted at 20 seconds. So if the ventilator doesn't acknowledge a patient effort in that time, what it will do is it will change over into apnea ventilation. So you can see that we're now in PCV plus, so it's yellow, it's not white. Okay. You've also got apnea ventilation being an active alert. The breaths are being delivered. If your patient starts breathing, they take 1 breath, 2 breaths, and then on the 3rd breath, it goes back into your NIV. Okay. But if it is that they've that you need to leave that PCV on, maybe get ready to intubate, you can control those PCV plus controllers. So I'll just go back into apnea for you. So I'm just going to make it quiet, but you can see here that I can come in and adjust that. You could put your rate up if you wanted to. So you can have it running, delivering those breaths while you get ready to intubate. Okay,
Yep.
Whereas if you were working in NIVST, you can see here that you've still got those pressure and PEEP that run the same. So PENSP is on top of PEEP. You set a rate. I'm going to set it at 10. And so what happens, so you can see here now we're in NIVST. And it almost looks a little bit like that PCV. So it's delivering breaths. If your patient was breathing, you'd see the triangles and there'd be spont breaths. If the patient doesn't trigger a breath, it delivers one of those mandatory breaths for you. Okay, but you're not made aware. So this is where people will often use the ST mode more for pre-intubation, if they've got that deteriorating patient, or for palliation. Okay.
What does ST stand for? Just a question.
Spontaneous time cycled.
Yeah.
So it is synchronized. So if your patient is breathing, it will synchronize to their efforts.
Yeah.
Okay. But when you look in controllers, you no longer have that apnea backup because you've set that rate. And it's also important just to be mindful that it does have a minimum rate of 5. So don't set it at 5. But that's about it. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, we just had a question about the NIV circuit and just confirming that's the same tubing that attaches to the back of the NIV mask.
Yeah, so it's the exact same. The coax circuit stays the same. You have your HME, and then you would connect up a non-vented mask, so a blue elbow. I had a sample here, but I don't at the minute. So it's just an elbow that doesn't have any holes in the top of it.
Yeah, good.
Yep. So it's COVID friendly.
Good. Good. Anyone else? This is a pretty quick run through. Anyone else? Any other questions about the basics?
Oh, what are they doing in Liverpool when they're pre-ventilating people with non-invasive?
So they use the NIV as their go-to, but if they've got a COVID patient that they know they'll likely be intubating, they use the ST.
So the NIVST, the patient's still triggering breaths. When they stop breathing, you have a backup rate.
Yeah.
And then so it'll be delivering breaths. When you're taking the mask, when you put the vent on standby, take the mask away, intubate, and then set it up, restart it in, I would assume, just an SIMV mode when you restart it.
So if someone needs to sort of change it to SIMV before you put it on the patient, or?
Yeah.
Would assume, yeah, it's a pretty, just 1 or 2 buttons. Either way, you're pressing start ventilation as well.
So NIVST is what we're using as BiPAP, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, with the mandatory backup rate.
Correct, yeah.
Yes, and then if we're making it CPAP, we turn our pressure support down to 0.
Exactly,
Correct.
yeah.
You can't do CPAP in NIVST.
No, we wouldn't be in that mode.
Yeah.
It'd be in the CPAP mode.
Exactly. Well,
Yes. Yeah, go back to modes. Yeah.
yeah. So if you want to CPAP, this obviously would be, sorry, 5 on would be 0.
0.
If you just want to CPAP of 5, it would be 5 and then 0 pressure support.
Yeah.
And when would you use the apnea mode?
If they're going to stop breathing on the
We just had a question, when would we use apnea mode?
Yeah. But there is a backup already on the sponsor.
So the backup is automatic on the NIV.
Yeah, okay, it's automatic.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't really use it. If we're intubating someone, we won't need to change it to apnea. We just
Not
have
really.
a minimum rate.
Are you talking pre-intubation or post?
Yeah, pre-intubation.
NIVST,
Yes.
and they'd have a backup rate, intubate, and then swap it over to SIMV.
The difference with the apnea is NIVST will immediately deliver the backup rate, whereas if you're just on the ordinary
That's right,
NIV
yeah.
mode or wait for 20 seconds.
Yeah,
before it
Yeah.
starts
so you
back
just,
up,
you wouldn't,
which is not what you'd want.
yeah, exactly. Good. Thank you.
Any questions from anyone at home?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you have a patient, COVID positive patient who's on NIV, and we're deciding to intubate, can you just show us on the screen which buttons you push? Do you go back to modes from the current screen?
Yeah. You
And then
click
just SIMV
SIMV, hit confirm,
confirm.
set whatever you want to set. I won't turn that up, but yeah, so you could set all of that, and then once you hit confirm, you're in that now, and then
Yeah.
you just hit start ventilation once you've intubated.
Okay. Cool, thank you.
That's okay.
All good?
My question was, would we be using this as standalone NIV for this patient?
Well, we've still got the V60s,
Yeah.
and they're still going to
Yeah.
either and B. They're very good for, as you know, for all NIV. I guess if we were going down the COVID line and we're going to move from one to the other, it'd be ideal to keep them on the same circuit because we can flip between circuits so easily here. I think that's the choice of user on the day and patient on the day.
I guess, yeah, it depends on, but I obviously prefer to have just one device in Resus 4 rather than swapping from one to another.
We can
Is
do
this just
it.
for Resus 4?
No, we've got 3 of them, so the ultimately would be have 3, obviously one ventilator in each Resus bay, but I guess obviously trying to avoid having both the V60 and this in the Resus bay. If
It
we are,
seems like this might be easier for transport purposes too. That's a much bulkier machine.
Absolutely,
So if you're
yeah.
anticipating you can move someone on anything.
You know, the benefit of this is we can switch between modes. So if we're even thinking we might be getting down the intubation route, why not start them on NIV on this? Like we've got the circuit, then we can flip between.
It's easy to come off.
It's bolted on.
No, it's not.
just ask a question, can it come off the stand? I do believe it's bolstered.
Yes, it
up.
can. No,
It can,
so
yeah.
underneath it, there's a little nozzle, and you twist that.
Oh, yeah?
So if we're
So
going,
release that, and then you'll be able to kind of slide it out and off the trolley.
So you have this, okay, that's good to know, so you can, I guess.
Yeah, much more maneuverable.
Yeah.
So then it can hang on the bed. Because if you look at the back of it, it's got a hook.
Just behind your ears.
Yes, it is.
Very hard.
Use
Cool. Any other questions for Sally? If not, we can have a bit of everyone can have a bit of a play with it and go from there. Any other questions from at home?
What is the standard setting if you just turn it on and hit start if you want to ventilate a patient?
that
Yes.
will depend on what we've put into your quick starts.
So is that for just the gender, height, weight?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So at the moment, all of yours are defaulted to ASV, so we'd want to fix that before it goes on the floor. But you can see here, so when mine starts up, it's a male 70 kilo ideal body weight, so 174 centimeters tall, which is almost a 500 mil tidal volume.
Okay.
174 centimetre.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Excellent. All right.
All
Thank
right,
you so much, Sally. That was great.
that's okay. No worries. I'll work
Thanks.
out how I get the recording and I'll send it through.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
That's okay. No worries, guys. Have a good afternoon.